At 12:42 p.m. on a Thursday, I was David, 58 years old, standing in the kitchen of my condo in Des Moines. My phone was in my hand, and I was staring at a text message. My wife, Emma, was supposed to be on the 4th day of a girls' trip to Palm Springs. The text was 2 short sentences. I'm not coming back. I've met someone better and already moved your things to storage. Accompanying the message was a screenshot of a bank transfer showing $116,000 had been moved from our joint savings to her personal account. I put my phone down and finished my coffee. A 16-year marriage had just ended in a 2-sentence text. And a screenshot. For months, I'd seen the signs. There were weekend getaways that lasted longer than they should. New clothes she never wore around me, and phone calls that stopped as soon as I walked into the room. I noticed it all. As a forensic accountant, noticing discrepancies is my profession, but I'd stayed silent. Perhaps that was my first mistake. Or maybe my first mistake was marrying someone who only saw my career as spreadsheets and boring numbers. I opened my laptop and checked an email account that Emma didn't know about. 3 notifications from my bank's security system popped up. Someone had tried to change the passwords on accounts Emma had never even seen. She was being thorough, and I had to admire that. I picked up my phone again and typed 2 words in reply: good luck. Then, I called my brother, Jason. Remember that contingency plan we talked about 5 years ago? I asked when he answered. It's time. He asked if I was sure. Yes, I replied. She just made her move. I hung up and looked at our wedding photo on the wall, the only picture in the condo that still had both of us in it. I should have noticed that too. I met Emma Bowman at a University of Iowa alumni event. I was 40, freshly divorced from a brief first marriage, and focused entirely on growing my forensic accounting practice. At 36, Emma was vibrant and ambitious, but completely uninterested in my work. I don't need to understand the details, she'd say whenever I tried to explain a case, as long as you make enough for us to live well. We married after a year. I helped her open her yoga studio, funding the whole thing from my savings. When she wanted a bigger house in a better neighborhood, I agreed. When she wanted luxury cars and expensive vacations, I nodded and signed the checks. I'll never forget what my father told me once while we were fixing his deck. He paused, hammer in hand. Son, he said carefully, I see your wife spends a lot of your money. Just be sure she values what you do to earn it. I brushed it off, but the comment stuck with me. 6 years into our marriage, I began quietly restructuring my assets. Nothing illegal, just protective. I created 2 limited liability companies, set up trusts, invested in crypto, and maintained offshore accounts for my international clients. Emma only knew about our joint checking and savings. I watched as she became more and more involved in the world of fitness influencers. Her Instagram followers grew into the thousands. She started taking trips with her wellness community, first for weekends, then for full weeks. You wouldn't enjoy it, she'd say. It's all yoga talk and juice cleansers. Last Christmas, she forgot my birthday. When I mentioned it the next day, she bought me an expensive watch and said, I've just been so busy with the studio expansion. I accepted the watch, but that night, I finalized the paperwork for my contingency plan. All the signs were there. I just didn't want to see the whole picture. The morning after her text, I woke up early and made coffee, just as I always did. Habits are tough to break, even when your world has fallen apart. I logged into my main financial management system, which I had custom built for my practice, but adapted for my personal use. With a few keystrokes, I activated the contingency protocol that Jason and I had designed years before. First, I froze all our joint accounts and credit cards. Then, I triggered a fraud alert on the $118,000 transfer using my banking contacts. To speed up the process, I sent documentation of financial misconduct to my attorney and gave her instructions to file for divorce immediately. Finally, I called my mother. Emma's left me, I said simply. She took the money and moved my things out while she was supposedly on vacation. My mother was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, David, she finally said. But I can't say I'm surprised. What are you going to do? What I've been preparing to do for years, I replied. Protect what's mine. An hour later, Emma's name lit up my phone. I declined the call. 10 more calls followed, then a text. What the hell did you do? The money's gone, and my cards don't work. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility she had listed in her text. Using the code she'd sent, I retrieved 2 boxes of my clothes and my laptop. The rest of my belongings, photos, books, and mementos from my father were nowhere to be found. At that moment, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about 15 years being discarded without a second thought. It was about someone thinking they could erase me from my own life. I stopped at a coffee shop and opened my laptop. Using financial databases only available to licensed investigators, I found everything I could on Trey Harmon. The fitness influencer Emma had been tagging in photos for months the someone better she had mentioned. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Trey's gym business was completely leveraged, 3 maxed out business credit cards and a lease he couldn't afford. And Emma had already co-signed a car loan with him 2 months earlier. I closed my laptop and drove to a hotel. For the first time in years, I felt completely clear about what I needed to do. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Monday morning, I walked into my office as if nothing had happened. My assistant, Valerie, looked up, surprised. David, I thought you'd be taking time off. Emma called here 3 times already. She did, I said, not as a question. She sounded upset. Valerie continued. Said there was a misunderstanding with your accounts and needed to reach you urgently. I nodded. If she calls again, tell her to contact my attorney. By noon, Emma had gone from calling to showing up in person. Your wife is here. My receptionist buzzed my office. She's quite insistent. I sighed and walked to the lobby. Emma was standing there, her designer sunglasses pushed back on her head, her yoga clothes perfectly coordinated. When she saw me, she smiled. The same smile she'd used for 15 years whenever she wanted something. David, there's been a huge misunderstanding with the bank, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. All our accounts are frozen. It's not a misunderstanding, I said quietly. You transferred money without authorization. The bank flagged it as fraud. Her smile faltered. It was our joint account. I'm your wife. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife, who emptied our savings while informing me you'd moved out and found someone new. I replied, that's textbook financial misconduct. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You cannot do this to me. I've already put down deposits on a new place. I've made commitments to Trey Harmon. Yes, I know all about those commitments, I said. Her face went white. You're investigating me. Just protecting myself from fraud, I replied. I'll fight this, she snapped. I deserve half of everything. I looked at her evenly. Half of what's in those accounts, sure. But you seem to think that's all there is. She blinked, confused. What are you talking about? You'll find out in discovery, I said. Then turned and walked back to my office. That afternoon, Emma's newly hired attorney emailed me, demanding immediate access to all financial records and threatening to expose irregularities in my accounting practice if I didn't comply. It was an amateur move, a threat with no substance. I forwarded it to my attorney with one line: proceed as planned. By evening, Emma had rallied mutual friends to her side. My phone was flooded with messages asking why I was being so vindictive and controlling. No one had questioned where she'd been the past week or who she'd been with. No one asked about the money she'd taken. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went to the gym, not Emma's studio or Trey's flashy fitness center, but the small community center I'd been going to for years. I lifted weights until my arms shook, then drove back to my hotel room. The trap was closing, but it wasn't closing around me. 3 days later, my attorney called. We found something interesting, she said. Emma's been siphoning money from your joint account for over a year. Small transfers at first, then larger ones. To where, I asked. though I already knew, multiple accounts. Some to her personal savings, but most to a business LLC registered to Trey Harmon. Almost $80,000 total. And she used your joint funds as the source. Yes, she confirmed, which means we can add financial infidelity to the divorce filing. I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't surprised, but the confirmation still felt like a punch to the gut. Emma hadn't just left me for someone else. She had been planning it for over a year, funding her exit and her new boyfriend's business with my money. That night, a text came from an unknown number. You need to back off. Emma deserves better than you. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. Trey Harmon was getting involved directly. Interesting. The next morning, I drove to my brother's house. Jason worked in digital security, the perfect complement to my financial expertise. We'd collaborated on cases before, but this was different. I need everything you can find on Harmon Fitness LLC, I told him. Bank records, loans, credit applications, everything. Jason raised an eyebrow. Legal channels only, right? Of course, I replied. We're just connecting public dots faster than most people could. 3 hours later, we had our answer. Trey Harmon wasn't just in debt, he was underwater. His social media portrayed success, but his business was failing. The new equipment, the expansion, the promotional events all funded through risky loans and, more recently, Emma investments. But there was something else, something Emmett couldn't have known. Look at this, Jason said, pointing to his screen. Harmon applied for a small business loan 4 months ago and used the gym equipment as collateral. That's normal, right? Yeah, but look who co-signed, he said. I leaned forward. The document showed Emma's signature on a $175,000 equipment loan. She had co-signed it before she left me. But here's the kicker, Jason said quietly. The loan specifies joint responsibility with her spouse. They used your marital status too. Secure better terms. I stared at the screen. She had put my assets on the hook for his loan without my knowledge. Exactly, Jason said. And there's more. 3 credit cards, a car lease, and the new commercial space rental law co-signed by Emma, all leveraging your marital assets as security. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, children were playing in the yard next door, oblivious to the adult complications of the world. She has no idea what she's done, I said finally, and neither does he. The next morning, I met with my attorney and laid out everything we had found. I want to move quickly, I told her, before they realize what's happening. She reviewed the documents and nodded. We'll file for emergency asset protection today. The loan fraud alone is enough to freeze everything until the divorce is settled. That afternoon, I drove to Harmon Fitness. The gym was sleek and modern, with motivational quotes painted on the walls and Trey's face plastered across the entrance. Inside, 20-somethings in expensive workout gear took selfies between half-hearted sets. Trey spotted me immediately. He was taller in person, with the artificial tan and capped teeth of someone who had built their career on appearance. He walked over, his hand extended and his smile perfectly calibrated. You must be David, he said. Emma's mentioned you. I'm sure she has, I replied, not taking his hand. We need to talk privately. His smile faltered, but he led me to his office. It was glass-walled, visible to everyone but soundproof. What can I do for you? He asked, closing the door. I placed a folder on his desk. This is every financial document that connects you to Emma, I said. Loans, credit cards, leases all co-signed using our marital assets as security. He picked up the folder cautiously. I don't understand. It's simple, I said. Emma used our marriage to back your business loans. Now we're getting divorced, and those guarantees are invalid. The color drained from his face as he flipped through the pages. These are all legitimate business arrangements between Emma and me. Maybe, I replied, but the banks approved them based on our combined assets and income sets she no longer has access to. He closed the folder. What do you want? Nothing from you, I said. I just thought you should know what's coming. The banks will be calling those loans due very soon. Emma said you were wealthy, he said, his voice hardening. That money's not an issue for you. Money's never been the issue, I replied. Trust was. I stood up to leave, but paused at the door. One more thing. When Emma moved out, she took some items of sentimental value to me. Family photos, my father's watch, things money can't replace. He stared at me for a long moment. I'll see what I can do, he said. I nodded and left. The next day, a courier delivered a box to my hotel. Inside were the missing photos, my father's watch, and other personal items. No note was included. That same afternoon, my attorney confirmed the emergency asset protection had been granted. All shared assets would remain frozen until the divorce was finalized. I logged into my financial management system and reviewed the alerts. Emma had tried to access our frozen account 17 times in the past 24 hours. She'd also tried to open a new line of credit using our home as collateral. It had been denied. My phone lit up with her name again. This time, I answered. What have you done? She demanded, her voice shaking. The bank called in trays, loans, all of them. They're seizing the equipment tomorrow. That's unfortunate, I said calmly. This is vindictive, David. You're destroying him to get back at me. I'm not doing anything to him, I replied. I'm simply protecting myself from fraud. You used our marriage to secure his loans without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal. We can work this out, she said, her voice softening suddenly. Come home, we'll talk. 15 years of marriage, and she still thought I could be manipulated that easily. There's nothing to work out, I replied. The divorce will proceed, the fraud investigation will continue, and Trey will learn an expensive lesson about due diligence. I ended the call and blocked her number. That night, I slept better than I had in months. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room as Emma and her attorney arrived for our court-ordered mediation. She looked tired. Her designer outfit and perfect makeup couldn't hide the strain. Her attorney spoke first. My client is willing to be reasonable about the division of assets, despite the aggressive tactics employed thus far. My attorney smiled politely. That's good to hear, because there's been a development. She slid a document across the table. The bank has completed its fraud investigation. They've determined that Emma forged David's signature on multiple loan documents, using their marital assets as collateral without his knowledge. Emma's attorney skimmed the document, his face piling. We'll need time to review this. Of course, my attorney said. But you should know that the bank has already referred the matter to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy before criminal charges are filed. Emma stared at me, her eyes wide. Criminal charges? David, you can't. Be serious. I met her gaze steadily. I didn't file the charges, the bank did. That's what happens when you commit loan fraud. Her attorney whispered something in her ear. She shook her head vehemently. If Ms. Bowman is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today, my attorney continued, David is prepared to provide a statement to the bank that could mitigate the criminal implications. He won't press charges for the theft of personal property or the unauthorized transfer from the joint account. I watched as Emma's carefully constructed world collapsed. She had expected anger, jealousy, perhaps even begging. She hadn't expected consequences. The settlement is generous, I said quietly. You keep your yoga studio, which was always profitable. You keep your car and personal belongings. You receive no alimony, and you assume responsibility for the debts you incurred in my name. And Trey, she asked, her voice barely audible. Mr. Harmon's financial issues are his own problem, my attorney replied. But without your husband's assets backing those loans, I understand the bank has already begun repossession proceedings. Emma signed the papers without further argument. As we left the conference room, she caught my arm. I never thought you'd fight back like this, she said. You always just went along with everything. That was my choice, I replied, just like this was your choice. I walked away without looking back. A month later, I moved out of the hotel and into a small house near downtown Des Moines. It was nothing fancy, just a craftsman with good bones that needed some work, the kind of project that would keep my hands and mind busy in the evenings. I heard through mutual friends that Emma had moved to Colorado to start over. Her Instagram showed mountain views and inspirational quotes about new beginnings. Trey's gym had been sold to a national chain, and he had relocated to Miami to expand his brand. Neither of them mentioned what had happened. People rarely advertise their failures. My brother Jason stopped by one Saturday to help me install new cabinets in the kitchen. Heard anything from Emma? He asked as we measured for the hinges. No, I said, and I don't expect to. You know, you could have taken her for everything, he said. The fraud charges alone would have ensured that. I shrugged. What would be the point? She's no longer my problem. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of measuring, cutting, and mounting creating a meditative state. I'm thinking of taking some time off, I said eventually. Maybe drive up to Minnesota to do some fishing at the cabin. Dad would like that, Jason replied. You haven't been there since he passed. That evening, after Jason left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the occasional dog bark or child's laugh breaking. The silence different from the upscale community Emma had insisted on, more real somehow. I thought about the last 15 years, about how I'd allowed someone else to define my life and my worth, about how I'd noticed the signs but chosen to ignore them, and about how, when the moment came, I had been prepared because some part of me had always known this day would arrive. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. The next morning, I called my office and told them I'd be taking 2 weeks off. Then, I packed my truck, locked up the house, and headed north. With no itinerary and no expectations, just the open road, and for the first time in years, no invisible ledger of resentments to balance.